very interesting statistic that more than 70% of men that divorce in that age range will be remarried within 2 years, remarried within 2 years.
All right, well, happy Valentine's Day, or Valentine's Day to be. It's around the corner, so that's why I'm dressed in pink. And our guest, well, not you, because you don't celebrate.
I did not get the memo. Yeah,
you're
that's
dressed
right.
in black because you're like, no Valentine's Day. Our guest, Nancy Hetrick, is also dressed for the occasion and for our topic. Nancy Hetrick is also a CDFA like me, and she is the founder and CEO of the Divorce Financial Planner Training Center, as well as a financial planner with Strategic Portfolio Solutions. She has 25 years of experience, over 25 years of experience in both investment management and financial planning, and founded Smarter Divorce Solutions in 2011. She exited her legacy wealth practice in 2021, but resumed limited financial planning in 2024. Nancy has become a nationally known trainer for divorce financial planners and offers continuing education and intensive advanced training for CDFA holders. Through divorcefinancialtraining.com, I feel like divorce is a team sport. We talk about that. So when people go through divorce, you should have a team. And actually, when you're a CDFA, you should also have a team.
Yeah, for sure.
I've talked about my mentors. I've talked about being a mentor. And actually, Nancy is another mentor of mine. More officially, she's my coach as a CDFA. So I am so glad to have her join us today. We are going to talk about life transitions and Valentine's Day. So Nancy, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here and glad that we can have this conversation, because I think I shared with you before, I actually told my ex-husband that I wanted a divorce on Valentine's Day.
Wow.
Ooh, okay.
Hearts.
Yes. So it's a little personal for me. And what's really interesting is we had actually been attempting reconciliation for about 8 months.
Wow.
And it wasn't until Valentine's Day where we both kind of realized what we no longer had.
Wow.
And there was a point at which we just looked at each other and said, you know what, we're done, aren't we? And so it was actually very peaceful.
So you two kind of came to that decision pretty much at the same time, would you say?
Yes.
Sort of? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It took a good year and a half to get there.
Yeah.
But yes. And because I think one of the things about these transitions is that we all kind of have the need to be able to say we did everything we could before you pull the ripcord. Right. And that's kind of where we were. But, Valentine's Day is a really interesting time. I mean, I kind of hate it as a Hallmark holiday. But
so does this one.
I think that's how I view it. As like holiday day.
And I'm with you, Jade. I kind of see it the same way. But when you're in a difficult relationship, it kind of shines the spotlight on everything that's lacking and what you wish you had. So it's almost inevitable that people in challenging relationships feel like the magnifying glass is on it at this time of year.
So I guess as you're approaching that Valentine's Day, I'm curious, were you kind of seeing that date as maybe a determining factor, like, hey, let's see what happens on Valentine's Day and see our interaction?
No, I can't say I was, because I knew things had been very difficult and challenging.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting, though, is something just like it literally just descended on me as we were talking on Valentine's Day about what was next and what we were doing and what we were trying to do. And where for the prior year, it had been characterized as a state of struggle, constant struggle with hopelessness and invincibility and my identity being compromised. All of a sudden, a sense of peace just came over me.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And this is not where we're supposed to be anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think I have I've had that moment once or twice, but I call it clicking, like it clicked. So all of a sudden it was just like, oh, I have this realization. Got to move
Yep.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I know you have these stages of transition which is a little different than what Jade and I have talked about in the past, the stages of grief, but you're going to talk about different types of transition that we may
Well,
experience.
yeah, and as a part of my ongoing continuing education and the desire to kind of really help, especially women going through these different life transitions, I've spent the last 2 years studying with Susan Bradley and the Certified Financial Transitionist Academy. And so I've learned just an incredible treasure trove of resources and tools for people going through transitions. And some of the work that she has done resulted in the 4 stages of transition. And they are anticipation, which is kind of self-explanatory,
Yeah.
ending, passage, and then finally new normal. So, anticipation, of course, is characterized by that time when you're pretty sure something's coming,
Yeah.
but no one's clicked yet. No one's pulled the ripcord yet. But there's this sense that things are about to change. And it may even be that your spouse has already told you things are going to change. And maybe they've even moved out of the house, but maybe you're in this long period of separation where you still haven't established when the actual ending of your current relationship is going to be. So that
Or if-
still will keep you in anticipation.
That
I
reminds
guess-
me of C.
Yeah.
4 years of transition of anticipation.
Yeah, maybe someone thinking that maybe this still could work. Let's maybe have some
Yeah.
separation from
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're still in it for sure. But yet there's this constant feeling that your normal world has been disrupted.
So
Something's not
foreboding.
working, yeah.
Yeah, a sense of foreboding.
Something else is coming. And it can be foreboding, Joe, but it can also be an optimism
True.
of
Yeah.
something new, right? And then you get into the official ending stage where you've actually decided to terminate one aspect, one period of your life, and move to a new period of your life.
Yeah.
And obviously that happens during that divorce process and the negotiation of terms and all of that. And by the way, these stages are not isolated. They overlap.
Yeah.
And so there's some overlapping of each stage. Then once you finally get all of the settlement terms agreed to, you move into passage of, okay, great. Now you've got to move.
Yeah.
Often you've got to change jobs. You've got to start maybe managing your own finances for the first time. You've got all of these possibilities in front of you that you have to actually make these life important decisions about. And it can be a time that feels incredibly chaotic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I just want to reassure all of your listeners, from anticipation all the way through passage is a psychological period that we fondly refer to as divorce brain. And it is not unusual at all to feel like you're losing your mind.
Yeah.
To feel like you can't make decisions the way that you used to feel like you're constantly in this fog where nothing makes sense. It's real. And studies have shown that you actually lose 15 IQ points during that transition.
And would you say that's probably why it's good to arm yourself with
A team.
resources and a team just to help you along, because maybe you're not thinking 100% rationally
Yeah.
or logically.
Thinking, as Nancy's describing that, it almost feels like someone could feel like they're really alone during that time.
Alone, or, we've talked about mistakes we've made because maybe we're rushing through the process because we just want to get through with it, whereas maybe if we were feeling 100% at that, we wouldn't have made those types of decisions or mistakes. So
Well, there could be so
Right.
many moving pieces going on in a potential short period of time as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much
Right.
going on.
Right. And, in my experience, the only people that I have seen go through a full divorce process without that significant impact to their reasoning abilities are the people that have been living separately for 5 years or more.
Mm.
Because the reality is they already went through these transitions a long time ago.
Yeah.
And they just never did any paperwork.
Yeah.
So they can come to the business side of it and still be pretty level-headed. But I
Yeah.
don't see that very often. And I've done hundreds of divorce transition cases.
So
Yeah.
what are
So-
some things that people should think about when they're in this passage process?
Yeah. And it could be over, a Valentine's Day or some other sort of holiday.
Yeah.
So
Maybe they're
Yeah.
going through that passage right now. It's like,
Well, I think to recognize that throughout passage, you're going to find yourself in some measure of two different states,
Mhm.
either a state of struggle or a state of flow. And when you start to experience the state of flow on a more regular basis, that's when you know you're getting really close to your new normal, which is the final stage. But that states of struggle, and one of the most important phases of this that I don't hear people talk about very often
Mhm.
is the compromised identity,
Hmm.
the loss of the identity of who you were in the world.
Yeah.
And I can remember feeling this so strongly. Everything I knew about myself had been flipped upside down, and I had no idea who I was in the world anymore.
Nancy, you kind of like talking about from like it's us, it's we. and then
We
it's
to me.
We to me.
Yeah.
We to me.
We to me.
And I was a wife and I was a mother. And now all of a sudden I find myself half of the week with no children in my house for
Yeah.
the first time in 15 years.
Well, that could also be kind of refreshing.
I
Yeah.
think I
Not
actually
at
think I
first.
feel like
Not at first.
I feel like parents need time to figure that out. So I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of parents mourn that 50%
For sure.
loss.
For sure. Yeah.
But then, yeah.
Maybe not during the passage time.
You
then.
adjust to it. And
Yeah.
that's part of that passage, right? Is adjusting to all of these new things. But it can be characterized, that struggle state can feel hopeless.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that, some people go into passage feeling invincible. Maybe you just got a big divorce settlement and you haven't really managed money your life. So you haven't done the financial planning piece. And I've seen people going through this divorce passage period spending money like it's going out of style.
Oh.
Like a
And
lottery
going
winner.
on big trips and buying fancy houses, and I'm going to get a rental property and let's get an RV. And so that invincibility is actually another state of struggle.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we know some people, or we've had clients like that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And so that's a time when that team is so important to help ground you in reality
Mhm.
and help you with the clarity of those decisions not being filtered through that lens of actual struggle. People can feel very numb and withdrawn, find it very difficult to even want to make any decisions because
Yeah.
they're just kind of pulled into themselves. Very inconsistent behaviors. They can be wonderful one day and then be very unpredictable the next day.
Yeah.
And I think that's good to hear, Nancy, because I think people going through passage right now feel like maybe they're crazy or this is unique to them and they feel very alone. So I'm hoping that for listeners that are potentially going through passage right now, at least hearing this from you and from us, it's like, oh, okay, this is not out of character.
Yeah.
This is
Other people,
happening and it's okay. It's just part of the cycle.
Exactly.
I was gonna-
And as a financial transitionist, when clients are experiencing that, we go through a process called financial triage, where what are all of the things on your mind? What are all of the things that you might possibly be worried about? And how urgent are they? What needs to be dealt with immediately, soon, or later? And what's in your control and what's not in your control, so
That's a
that
good
you can
one, right?
narrow your focus,
Yeah.
focus to just one or two things at a time that you have to deal with.
Mhm.
And it is okay during this period of passage to not make important decisions and just wait and give yourself some space.
Yeah, I kind of see an overlap with maybe losing a significant other, like to death.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
where, you know, you as the outside advisor looking in, you can see all these things that need to be done. But from their side, there's only so much capacity that they can do, for one. And so you almost need to, like, you know, just slowly piecemeal some, like, what's the most critical thing to do.
Yeah, help
Because
them
otherwise it's
prioritize
overwhelming.
even. Yeah. And just say, hey, let's just talk about this.
Like I was having
Yep.
a conversation with this recent widow, and she was kind of going through those same sort of things where it's like she wasn't ready to do all those steps there. And I think the same thing would be happening with some divorced people where they only can do certain parts right now.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Drag it out.
What you'll find really interesting is if I can take a client through this financial triage exercise,
Mhm.
and they make the decision what's the most important thing to deal with, now they're going to actually deal with it. Whereas if I bring it to them and say, you know, this is really the most urgent, we need to focus on this, I may or may not get their participation in dealing with that. So the whole goal of the financial transitionist designation is helping clients gracefully move through these phases of transition in a way that they feel they're reclaiming their own control, their own autonomy, their own spirit, and their own sense of possibility for their future. It's a very empowering process, and frankly, one that has been sorely lacking in the world of financial services.
Yeah.
There's definitely a benefit for that self-realization, because it feels like then, whether you're leading them a little bit, I feel like they've achieved something themselves. Like
Yeah,
they've
letting them
identified it.
take ownership,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Over their decisions. But maybe we can help them by organizing the choices maybe and presenting the choices in such a way where they're like, oh, okay, I know
what I
what's
wanna
important
do.
here. Yeah.
Exactly. And so along these lines, what I'd like to offer to your listeners today, a transitions journal.
Okay.
And it's really a coaching exercise that if you know you're getting ready to go through one of these life transitions, or it's just happened to you and you found yourself here,
Yeah.
it's a wonderful exercise to take you through a process of getting yourself more mentally prepared and emotionally prepared for what you're about to go through. And so I would love to offer that to your listeners, for anybody that wants to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to provide that.
That would be
That'd be
great.
lovely.
Or
Yeah.
if you can also reach out to us and just mention the Transitionist Journal. We could also send it to you.
Yeah.
So either if you contact any of us, what is that last stage, Nancy? The new
After
normal. The new
Yeah.
The new
normal.
normal. That's the great stage.
I
And
love the new normal.
new normal is where everybody wants to get to, right? And
Yeah.
that's when you feel you're most of the time in a state of flow, where you have clarity, you're hopeful, you're resilient. Things can happen, and you'll be like, oh, that stinks, but you know what? I know I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
You have consistent behaviors. You are refreshed, you're energized, and you're excited about your future.
Mm-hmm.
And it can take a while to get there. And you finally have a new identity that is intact and that you're confident in. And there's just a whole new sense of possibility for your new future.
Now, curious, maybe we should all answer this question. How long did it take you to get to the new normal?
That's a great question. And there's actually some pretty normal standards for most humans.
Okay.
And I hope that this isn't disconcerting for some, but it's usually about 2 years.
Oh my God, I was going to say that.
Oh.
It took me 2 years, I think.
Is
How about you?
I was going to ask whether or not there's a difference in with sexes as well.
Why? Because yours was like a month? Like what
No,
was it?
I just no. But as I've been thinking about all this, like as we've been talking today, and it's great that Nancy, you're offering these resources, but I feel like for whatever reason, males tend not to probably be jumping on that straight away, whereas females do, and they're better at, I think, that self-help and putting their hands up.
Okay.
So
Well, that's a really, really good point, Jade, because it is what you're talking about
Yeah.
is the self-awareness, and women are more cultured to, especially as we look at where the majority of divorces are happening now, right, which is between 45 and 75.
Mm-hmm.
Women of that age, we're kind of on the Oprah Winfrey, Brene
Yeah.
Brown train wagon of how can we be our best selves, right? And you are correct that men are not as likely to do that. Very interesting statistic that more than 70% of men that divorce in that age range will be remarried within 2 years, remarried within 2 years.
That's their new normal, I guess.
Yeah.
Correct. And then
Ah.
the same more than 70% of women will not remarry again.
The same, how many? 70?
More than 70%. And I'm talking about
Wow.
gray divorces.
Right.
So women are looking for a new normal.
Mhm.
Men can tend to want to retreat to their old normal and just recreate what they had before.
Yeah.
Just replace, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
back to you, Jade. How long did it take for you to get to your new normal, do you think? Jade has a memory problem. So
I think looking
Yeah.
at his face, maybe he's not there yet. Maybe he's not there yet.
I think it took a while. There was.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. I really can't define how long it took
Uh-huh.
because I am a male in that sense. So, but I definitely more than 12 months for sure.
Okay.
I'd say between that 12 months to 2 year mark. So.
Yep,
Okay.
and that's really typical. And it's also proportionate to the length of the marriage, right? If you
Interesting.
were only married 5, 6, 7 years, your new normal might come within 12 months. But if you're married 15 years plus, it's going to take longer. If you have a 30-year marriage, that's going to take much longer, right? So the level of the transition that you have to endure is also going to play a large factor in how quickly you can move through these stages.
Well, Nancy, I saw that journal. I loved the different questions and exercises that were being prompted throughout the pages. So I hope that if you're going through a divorce, or even if you just finish your divorce, reach out to us, get a copy of that journal. I think it would be really helpful. And yes, it is self-help, but I love self-help.
Yeah.
So I love just thinking about my feelings and just gathering my thoughts instead of trying to ignore them. So thank you for offering that, Nancy.
It's good to be
So
prompted.
Yeah. So we are at that point in the podcast where we're going to play Divorce This or That.
So it's a little game that we have and you're going to, if you're up for it, we're going to involve you in.
Yes.
Where our producer will kind of give us 2 options or 2 choices, and one of them we have to kind of divorce and
The
anymore.
divorce
Yeah,
one. Yes.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right. So they're thinking. There's 2 of them. They're thinking. All right.
All right. So our question for Divorce This or That is, would you choose, Nancy? And as a guest, we'd like you to go first.
You're in the hot seat. You're in the hot seat.
To go through the divorce process.
The transition.
The
new
transition,
normal.
yeah.
New normal.
During the pandemic or during the 1960s, maybe where women didn't have as much equal rights and maybe there's some more stigmas about divorce.
But at least there's people to talk to, because during the pandemic, you were stuck indoors and really not supposed to be near other people.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
All
easy.
virtual.
All alone.
That one, frankly, is an absolute easy piece of cakewalk. Absolutely the pandemic.
Ooh.
And here's why.
Okay.
In the 1960s, marriage was still deemed a lifetime contract. There were not a lot of people getting divorces, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
There were no resources for people getting divorces.
Yeah.
That's a good
There
point.
was no mental health work being done on people going through divorce. We had no idea what the long-term impacts of these kinds of transitions were going to be. There were not even guys, if you got a divorce in the 1960s, there wasn't even child support.
Oh my God.
There was nothing designed
You're on your
to
own.
support divorcing people. So we are way better off today with understanding these transitions and doing our best as a society to preserve the family so that everyone lands in the safest way possible.
Even in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think she's.
How about,
Well,
I feel like you sold it, but you can go.
I love all those reasons. Yeah, no. And look, thinking even though you could be alone during the pandemic, you might have your kids there, but you've also got those great resources of like therapists and other sort of counselors who can meet with you virtually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, so I practiced during the pandemic. So I will tell you, I actually feel like it was an advantage to go through this during the pandemic. And you know why? Because you couldn't get into the courts, you couldn't get into the attorneys, but you could come talk to mediators and certified divorce financial analysts like me, and we could do your entire divorce without any of that adversarial system. And it was fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it would be different for somebody that gets their energy
Needed
from
it.
being around people, but I liked being alone during the pandemic. I thought it was a good time to read books and exercise and, get close to my emotions and my thoughts. So I would definitely pick the pandemic. I don't think being alone, either with my kids or half the time without my kids, I don't think that's a disadvantage. And I do feel like we actually got a lot accomplished, started our business, did all this stuff during the pandemic because there was just a lot more time to accomplish stuff and take care of ourselves.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
definitely. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
Well, that was
You are
lovely.
so welcome. It's absolutely my pleasure. And I'm so glad that you're doing this show because the more information we can share with people going through these life transitions, the better. The better outcomes they'll have and the more resources they'll know that they need to get in touch with. So thank you both for being the hosts.
Thanks for joining us,
Awesome.
Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy, and happy Valentine's Day, everyone.